If you've ever thought of quilting your own projects but just don't know where to start, I have the perfect first steps for you. I've put together a PDF guide. I call it 3 Steps Toward Freehand Freedom. These are the baby steps, but they can help you move past your overwhelm and show you that yes, indeed, freehand quilting can be learned. So if you'd like to snag this PDF, there's a link in the show notes, or if you're an Instagram user, just message me 3 steps. That's the number 3 STEPS, and I'll send you that link. Let today be the day you get started.
Like most quilters, my story is very much the same. You get hit by that quilting bug and you just, there's no turning back after that. And it ruled my life for about 3 years straight, where I decided I was no longer going to do any cooking, cleaning, house chores, or anything like that. I was just strictly I would go to work, come home and sew and quilt, go to work, come home and sew and quilt. And I did that for almost 3 years straight.
Welcome to Measure Twice, Cut Once, the podcast where we hear quilters and other crafters' stories and draw encouragement and even life lessons from them. In today's show, we'll be hearing from Kathryn LeBlanc. Well, I'm your host, Susan Smith, coming to you from my quilting studio, Stitched by Susan. This is where my long arm Lucy and I spend our days doing freehand edge-to-edge quilting. Now, if you're not a quilter and those terms really mean nothing to you, it's basically doodling on the surface of a quilt with a 50-pound writing pencil with needle and thread attached and at really high speed. And if you are a machine quilter, I invite you to tune in to the live and unscripted events that I host on my YouTube channel, also called Stitched by Susan. These are the first and third Friday every month. They're live, and so they're interactive, meaning that you can ask questions and get answers about a project while I'm actually working on it. And if you'd like to be notified of upcoming events, grab my newsletter at stitchedbysusan.com, and then you'll get advance warning of the upcoming episodes. But once again, they are the first and third Friday of every month, and they're at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Today's Pins and Needles is brought to you by The Will and Dave Show.
Hi, I'm the Will half of The Will and Dave Show, a short little podcast that myself and the eponymous Dave like to record talking about the things that really matter to us, whether that's social, political, or pop culture. Usually we don't see eye to eye, but more often than not, we can find some common ground in there somewhere. And now, back to Pins and Needles with a quick tip for all you sharp quilters out there.
Let's talk quilt storage for a second. Lots of we quilt makers have many quilts that we're storing. They're often folded in closet shelves. And the problem with that is those folds can produce creases in our quilts that will never come out. And one of the ways to reduce that to a minimum is to refold your quilts from time to time. So I recommend a couple of times a year. Maybe this is a good chance to bring out seasonal quilts, for Easter or for Christmas or for Halloween. And just take those quilts and fold them along different places. If they've been folded in quarters, maybe fold them in thirds so that those fold lines don't get pressed into them as permanent creases. It will prolong the life of your quilt and just make it look more cozy. You know that I love my coffee. If you're interested in supporting this podcast, simply go to buymeacoffee.com/Stitched by Susan. There, for the price of one yummy coffee, you're able to make a one-time contribution. Thank you so much for your support in this way. It really helps us to continually improve our equipment and thus the podcast that we bring to you. So maybe take a moment now to refill your cup as you settle back to enjoy today's interview. My guest today is Kathryn LeBlanc. Kathryn is a very accomplished quilt maker. She has pieced and quilted on her domestic machine. She's done long arm quilting, pattern designing and publication, and most recently, she is now a published author, and her novels feature quilting in them. Welcome, Kathryn, into the studio. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really looking forward to getting acquainted. As with so many of my guests, I'm a follower on social media, so I see lots of your posts and things that you're working on kind of today. But I always love to know the backstory. Like, what was it that drew you into quilting, or do you know when that big door first opened for you?
I feel like as a writer now, I should be able to write a really clever response to that question because I do get asked that quite a lot and I should have a good response. But, I've been asked many times and I don't have a very good answer for that. I think I started with a pillowcase and then went to my local Joann's and, I made I guess a king size quilt for my very first quilt.
Oh my.
And myself and my husband, we both pushed the thing through my little domestic sewing machine, and I didn't know anything about quilting at the time at all. But it became an addiction, like immediately. As soon as I started, it became an addiction. And I don't honestly know what it came from. I think I just got it in my head that I wanted to make some pillowcases, and it just took over from there. I don't have anybody in my family who quilts or anything like that. So it didn't come from someone in my family passing down long-standing traditions or anything like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you know what it was that first attracted you? Was it the colors? Was it playing with the fabric? Was it the design process? Like what bug bit?
I don't know. I come from a family where we always did crafts. I mean, we did everything from, candle making, basket weaving, knitting, crocheting. I mean, a little bit of sewing, kind of, but not really. And so my mom always had us doing different kinds of crafts and things like that. So I think, I had an affinity for crafts to begin with, but there's just something about quilting that I think every quilter knows. It's kind of like our crack.
It certainly is. I mean, I honestly think quilting stores ought to have warning labels on the stores, maybe addictive.
Yeah, we definitely need a helpline that we can call into.
Helpline, for sure, for sure. I don't want to be the person manning the phones, though, because I'm definitely the one who is suffering from
Yes,
the
exactly.
addiction.
I'd be calling in a day and night. Yeah,
I know, 24 hours, hopefully.
Like most quilters, my story is very much the same. You get hit by that quilting bug and you just, there's no turning back after that. And it ruled my life for about 3 years straight, where I decided I was no longer going to do any cooking, cleaning, house chores or anything like that. I was just strictly I would go to work, come home and sew and quilt, go to work, come home and sew and quilt. And I did that for almost 3 years straight. And my husband was crazy about it.
So what's the little saying? At least when I make a quilt, it stays made. I like that. Right? As opposed to housework, which is just a never ending sort of wheel.
You just have to do it over again.
I know. So why bother? Yeah. So it's curious to me, though, that quilting should be the craft you land on if you've had that wide variety in your life. Or maybe that's not the case. Do you still have other hobbies, or is just quilting pretty much the focus?
I mean, quilting is my main hobby. I enjoy doing genealogy, but that's another thing. Once you start going down that rabbit, it's a giant addiction that you need help getting out of. So basically it's just quilting right now. I only have time in my life for one hobby.
It is compulsive, and you're right. If you want to do it right, you just got to dive in with both feet. Yeah. So quilting has, at least in recent years, has become your business. How did that kind of happen? And then we'll come back to later talking about how you manage that and how you manage to keep the joy and your love of quilting still alive. So how did this become your work?
I was working for corporate America. I was in the accounts payable and I was a supervisor of a local pharmacy chain. And it just, I was making really good money and I was getting bonuses and things like that. And, that's great. But there's no joy in working for corporate America. I don't know, maybe people find it, but I wasn't finding it. And I just decided one day, I said, you know what? I'm quitting this. I'm leaving the paycheck behind and I'm opening a quilt store. And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, to be quite honest with you. But
now, was that a brick and mortar store or an online store?
Yeah. I opened a small, about like 600 square foot. It was just a teeny tiny little space. And it was funny because I had this tiny little space, very, very little, retail product to fill it with, because I quit my job literally and opened a store 2 weeks later. I sat in there and I thought to myself, what if nobody comes? I'm so used to being in this building with thousands of people like coming and going and everywhere. And, there's people to talk to and there's things to do and there's phones ringing. And now I'm sitting in this tiny little square 600-foot box and thinking to myself, what if nobody comes? I'm going to be all by myself, so it was pretty funny. But I very, very quickly, within just a couple of months, moved into another space across the hall from where I was that was like 900 square feet, which was much bigger. And there was plenty of people coming and going. So that wasn't an issue. But yeah, I just literally quit and opened a store. A few weeks later, I found a location and the owner of the plaza was just phenomenal. He gave us a great deal to come in to get started. So he was super helpful in terms of, starting a new business and everything like that. And then eventually, after about probably a year, I moved into an 1,800 square foot, which is a traditional size that most smaller retail establishments, run in. And I was in there for about 3 years or so before I decided to close up. I mean, it was just really getting tough with the economy and everything. Little did I know that I only had to wait another 6 more months and our business was going to skyrocket through the roof with
no
COVID.
kidding. The pandemic has been amazing for making online accessible. And also, like, I found it surprising that, well, I'll back up a little bit. I'm a long arm quilter, and the demographic that I quilt for typically is retired or semi-retired people, right, who have a little time and a little funds on their hands. And, 3 years ago or 2 years ago, they weren't all that comfortable shopping online, taking classes online, having Zoom meetings, for goodness sakes, online.
Right.
And now that has changed. And I think that has forever changed the face of the quilting industry. I'm sure many others, but that's the one we're in, right? And I think that has forever changed because of the pandemic.
It really has. And then I've talked to people in all different kinds of businesses about this. As I was getting ready to close the store, and there were other reasons why I closed the store, health reasons and things like that as well. But as I was getting ready to close the store, I was wondering I think we were all wondering what the state of our business was going to be in that industry, because it was kind of dying. And then all of a sudden we have this pandemic, which is awful for, the majority of it. And then all of a sudden it becomes this blessing for all these other businesses that were actually on their, on the decline. And it amazes me. I mean, I was lucky that I had already started doing live sales on Facebook prior to closing the store and prior to the pandemic and all that stuff. So I had already been doing that for quite a while before all this boomed. So I was very lucky in that aspect. But, during the pandemic, I had the best sales year I've ever had in business. So, and now we have a flourishing, thriving industry again, like overnight almost. So it's really amazing how.
I feel like that might be a lifelong change too. I was talking to another guest a while back, and she had noted that sewing machines for a period of time were hard to find on store shelves. They were literally sold out because so many women and women with their teenage daughters and so forth were picking up sewing. And so she found, both her YouTube instructional videos were going crazy. And she was like, this is the perfect time now for quilting, as you say, to flourish and to grow, because all these people now have sewing machines and a little time on their hands. So I hope that too has kind of been a shot in the arm. Maybe that's not the right phrase to use, for the quilting industry as a whole, because people are back into crafting and into, sort of slower pursuits, maybe than in past years. So I think that's a good thing.
I think it's wonderful, going from a state of we didn't know what the state of things were going to be to all of a sudden having this instantaneous reversal of the way things were. It's just miraculous. And I've talked to people in other, careers and jobs and sectors and things like that. And, some it wasn't good for, obviously, but others it was tremendous for. So it just,
I mean, it was definitely a cloud, but it's good to be able to find the silver linings too. And those who succeed are those who find a way to pivot, right? And to make something out of what they're given. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, honestly, in business, that's literally that's what it's all about, is being able to pivot. When things change, you need to be able to pivot quickly into whatever the next biggest thing was. And I'm facing this now, and I'm sure many others are facing this now, is there's so much out there now online, and there's so many live videos, because that's how I predominantly make most of my income, that now it's starting to suffer. It's going in the opposite direction in terms of that, because it's so prevalent now. So, there's just in stores, when they started to reopen again after the pandemic, they were making good money off of the online sales and the Facebook sales and the live sales and all those things. Now they have to go back to running their retail establishment, but do we continue to do this online stuff because that's where it all is? Do we go back to running the retail? Do we try to figure out how to do both? It's really intriguing.
So many decisions. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit more about some of the classes or things that you offer. For example, I noticed in passing that you recently had a scavenger hunt. What does that look like in the quilting world?
Oh, the scavenger hunt was actually for the book, believe it or not.
Okay. Tell us about the book. We'll take a step back and do that first.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Going back to your question too, you said you wanted to go back to something when you asked me about it.
It would not be the first time that we went down a rabbit trail and never found our way back to the main path, so it's all right.
Oh, that's what it was. You asked me how I maintained my love of quilting, I think, through running the business and stuff like that. I think when I first opened the retail, the brick and mortar store, I was still able to maintain my quilting to a large extent. But as I grew and got bigger and busier, and, the demands on my time for the store and things like that, I wasn't able to sew anymore. Then that's when your passion and your joy and your hobby becomes your business, and you kind of have to decide how you want to deal with that. But so I had to employ a lot of other folks who sewed for me, which doesn't give me as much joy doing the sewing, but at least it gets things taken care of. And then when I closed the retail store and started to focus on the pattern design business, I found that because I was so detailed into designing the patterns and writing the instructions and all the computer work and updating the website and all that stuff, again, I found myself in another place where I didn't have enough time to sew all the samples and all that stuff. So I again started to employ others to sew for me again. And it seems to be like the running trend here.
I'm thinking.
But and now that I'm kind of taking a little bit of a step back from the pattern writing to focus on the book writing, I have patterns that are coming out with those. So I still am writing patterns and producing stuff. Now I'm actually sewing those quilts that those patterns are coming from that are attached to the books and stuff. So, much happier that I have that time again to get back to that sewing. But it's always, I think, a juggle of making things a priority.
I think you're right. And I think probably that's an entrepreneurial struggle. And for each person, it maybe looks a bit different. For you were able to go and hire people to do some of the sewing work. Others might have chosen to hire people to do some of the layout of the patterns, for example. So I think it depends on where your strengths lie, right? And what thing you want to do and what thing you want to delegate.
Yeah, exactly. In pattern design, I felt like I wanted to be, I'm putting a pattern out there. I want to be responsible for what's the content in the pattern, It's easy enough to make a couple blocks to see that they work or what have you, and then you can get a good idea that your quilt's going to work. But I think, and I have seen lots of designers who choose one or the other too as well. Obviously I didn't have enough money to do both, but that's okay. Yeah. And so it's just, again, it's a pivot thing. I pivoted from retail, brick and mortar to online, and now I'm pivoting into another, sector of my career, into the writing of the quilting fiction. And it's just, you just keep pivoting and keep going.
I find that really interesting. I've had a kind of similar thing happen for me. I'm in the quilting world, but I dabbled for a while in pattern writing too, because many quilters have heads full of ideas, right? But what I quickly learned was it's not a quick or easy process to convert that, to translate that maybe into a pattern that people can then follow. So that's a whole other set of skills. I'm always glad I did it, because now I understand what goes into the making of a pattern. and can appreciate the skill and even appreciate the price tag. So for those who have never done it, it might seem like, oh yeah, you just jot the measurements down on paper and drop a few diagrams and you're done. But it's quite a technical process. So I appreciate knowing that now. And I have found that in different, pivots in my career, and I bet you are too, that changes. And it's good to experiment with things and see what you love doing. But for me, I pivoted right out of pattern writing because I quickly found that was not my love, quilting was. So it's really interesting that now you're pivoting into writing books, fiction, you said, right?
Yeah. I did long arming for a while as well. So very similar to your experience with pattern writing, I dabbled with the long arming because originally what I did love about quilting was the actual act of quilting a quilt, not necessarily the piecing or whatever, but the actual quilting. So I thoroughly enjoyed quilting on my domestic, and then I bought a long arm and learned how to do the long arming, and I long armed for people for a while, and I just, I realized that it just wasn't what I wanted to do, and I do very much love the pattern design, but it is a very intensive, time-consuming process. So, sewing has to take a backseat, writing has to take a backseat, like just depending on what you're working on. So I am glad that I've sort of dabbled, as you say, in almost all of the aspects, I think, of quilting that there are now at this point. And I'm settling on writing. This is my long-term focus. So hopefully we won't be pivoting.
Yeah. What a privilege it is, though, to be able to try out the water in different things, right? You were talking earlier about being in corporate America. I mean, I think a lot of people get in jobs that have an established trajectory and they're kind of stuck to that. So I'm grateful for the opportunities that we entrepreneurs have to try a little of this. And if we don't care for it, move on to the next thing.
That's the spirit of it. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I miss every day when I go to bed, I miss my paychecks from my corporate job, but I don't miss the headache, and I don't miss the struggle. Yes, I have headaches in my business now, but they're totally different headaches.
They're headaches by choice.
Yeah.
Not inflicted on you. Yeah.
Exactly.
So tell us about your books. This is a new-ish venture. You're writing your second book currently, is that right?
Yes. The first book was released in November. So I'm coming up on book 2 now, which I've been in the editing phase right now is what we're at in book 2. And it's due to be released February 3rd or 4th, I think it is.
So give us a little snapshot of book 1. What's the title and a little bit of what it's about, if you would.
So book 1 is called Sewing Suspicion. And I originally, I would say probably about 5 years ago, decided that I wanted to start writing. And it just, with the business and everything I already had going on, we just talked about that, it just wasn't the right time. And so I decided not to do it because it didn't feel like the right time. And I originally wanted to write some sort of like women's fiction or journal, or, maybe with a little patterns and some fun quotes and things like that. And it, you could jot down the projects you're working on, what your life is like at the time, just kind of an all around upbeat woman's journal. So that's what I originally was going to start writing. And then I started reading some fiction stories from a popular author. And I binged like 7 of her books in a weekend. And I said, this is what I need to be doing. I need to be writing fiction, not these women's journals, like, what are you thinking? And I actually enrolled in a school. I enrolled in a writing school to teach me how to write a book, and then also to do the business aspect of it. So there's facets of that. And so book 1, they kind of push you right out the gate to really do it, because most people set out to do it and then they never actually follow through and finish, which is, it's a shame.
I think that's a human failing. But so there's so many things that you just don't know how to do until you just start doing it. Is book writing a bit like that? Like you just need to get in there and start?
It's very much like that. It's very much like learning how to quilt. You know, there's rules and traditions and all these things that you pick up kind of as you go. And you just, as you write story after story, as you quilt after quilt, you learn more and more of the nuances of each thing that you're working on. So it's very much the exact same thing with writing. And, you know, like with pattern writing, it's very labor intensive. You need all these skills and you need to be able to market the patterns and everything like that after you've written them. Very much the same thing. What happens when you have a book, you don't just throw it out there and people will come. You don't just build it and they come, you know?
Right.
Exactly. So, you know, so it's very much very similar to that. And so they really push you to get a rough draft done. And the theory is that if you finish that rough draft, you're like 80% more likely to actually produce a book than you were if you never even finished that rough draft in the first place. So the school is very focused on making sure you get that first rough draft done, because once you get that done, then you've got that under your belt, you get the first book out there in the world, you're more likely to be successful and continue on. So they push you they try to push you to do like a 30-day book, but it's almost nearly impossible. So 6 weeks it took me to write the first rough draft, which was very intensive. It was super stressful. I worked at it every single day. Everything else went by the wayside, you know. But I was able to do that. But then it took me another 6 months to get it out into the world.
So are we back to not bothering with the cooking and the house cleaning? Because who needs that?
Oh, that never changed. That never changed. I never picked that back up again after I started quilting.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. I'm going to give that method a try.
I always tell when you have the opportunity. I mean, it's not for everybody. Not all husbands or, you know, partners are that gracious, and not everybody can afford. I don't hire somebody to do it, but not everybody can afford to hire someone else to do it. But I always tell quilters who are still doing those things, what are you doing? You're not supposed to do those things.
Manage
anymore.
your time a little better.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so 6 months it took me to get it out. It's been out there in the world now for 5 weeks, and they kind of prepare you for things to be, you know, prepare for the worst, hope for the best kind of thing. And I'm very pleased with how the first one turned out. It was super, super expensive to self-publish, and I'm probably in a million years, I don't know, maybe I'll make my money back. I don't know, but it's going to be a long time.
I hope so.
But,
I have faith in you.
Yeah, no, it's going really good. I've been able to stay in the #1 bestseller category in the quilting category for, I would say, you know, 75% of the days it's been on
Oh, good.
out there. So
good.
that is phenomenal in itself.
So can you give us just a couple sentence snapshot of what the book is about? Whet our appetite a little bit, and then we'll be sure and include links where folks can find it.
I can read you the blurb. It's only about 200 words. It's fairly quick.
Do it.
It's secrets and a patchwork of lies. Can Alex string together the truth before her life unravels? Alex Bailey's heart feels threadbare, struggling with the dubious practices of her New York City law firm. She's left her high-profile career and is eager to clear her conscience with a trip home to care for the woman who has raised her. But when an ill fate befalls the quilting matriarch, the shocked lawyer suspects someone is covering up murder. Unpicking the strands of her beloved grandmother's life, Alex patches together clues that prove her loved one's death was no accident, and when the practice's stained history weaves into the culprit's devious handiwork, she'll need to stay alive long enough to expose a heartless killer.
Okay, just your use of the little crafty words in there, the weaving, the patches, the unstitching.
I would love to tell you that I wrote that. I did not write that.
Well, it's fantastic anyways.
So there's a thing about hiring out. We talked about this already briefly. In the book world, there's a thing about hiring out as well. And there's just certain things that some people choose to hire out, like having your book cover designed. Not everybody is a graphic designer, so it makes sense. You have to have a really beautiful book cover. And blurbs is one of those other things that people hire out. And they have, you know, they have companies who specialize in this particular thing. Because the thing about a blurb is its only job is to sell your book. It's the sales pitch for your book. And not every person who is a writer is a salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't take any credit whatsoever for that blurb, but it does very, very much express kind of the nitty gritty of what's going on in the book.
Well, it's very well done. So, kind of like
Yeah.
pattern testing, if you ever need proofreaders, hit me up. Love it.
Oh, very good, very good.
Well,
Yeah,
I will
definitely.
go right after we're off air. I will go and hunt up your book, and I will be sure and put links in the show notes so that folks can easily find it and the new one that's coming out. So tell me more about the scavenger hunt that I saw recently. I think in your Facebook feed. Did that have to do with patterns or with the book?
That has to do with the book. It's actually, so it's basically just 12 items that are listed in the book. And all you have to do is, as you're reading, if you pick out the items and just jot down where you saw it in the book, you can fill out a Google form that I have. And then we're just giving away prizes and things like that. It's, I learned it through the romance authors. Sometimes they do this with their books a lot. And it just was a fun way to get people to read it. So there's two things. You got to get them to buy it, number one, and then you got to get them to read it. So it's like just buying it isn't quite the deal. There's a second layer to it. So that was intended to get people immersed into the content of the book.
It is, and you're building super fans is what you're doing there. I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great idea.
So book 2 is called Quilting Calamity. And each of the books features a really fun cover with a quilt on it. And those quilts will be released as time goes by. As I said, I'm working on them. And,
so the pattern for reproducing that quilt is what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So book 1 features the grandmother's flower garden quilt, and the quilting matriarch in the book, she actually makes 10 of these grandmother's flower garden quilts out of 1-inch hexies. Now,
you listeners can't see my big eyes, but 10 grandmother's flower garden quilts. Wow.
All by hand. Yeah. Granted, she's in her late 70s, early 80s. But it's obviously very fantastical that somebody would be making that many in their lifetime. It's possible. But, and then in book 2, the book 2 is based on a cruise ship. So we make a storm at sea quilt, in book 2.
Lovely.
So they don't actually get a free pattern in the book, but in the book we do work on making quilts and talking about quilt themes and things like that. And, so it's quilt centric, but it's not
instructional, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Definitely a novel. That's what we're looking for. Good. Well, I really look forward to reading these. That is so great. I'm happy to see someone, that knows their way around this industry delve into that side of things. I've read quilting novels before. Some are wonderful, some are quite meh. So I look forward to reading yours. I think, they sound fantastic.
It blows my mind every time somebody picks it up. And says, it's great and everything like that. It blows my mind that people are reading it, that it's out there, that it's finally done. I hope that as time goes by and I grow and become a better writer, I'll get even better and better and stuff like that. But I felt when I started I felt like we needed more of this.
I agree.
Yes. So that was why I chose to do it. I said, we need more.
I'm so glad you saw that lack and you're filling that need. I suspect that, I don't know this because I'm not a writer, but I suspect that it's much like developing your personal aesthetic, your personal taste in quilting, that I think writing must be like that too. As it goes on, as you write more books, we'll see you sort of find your voice. And so, I look forward to that.
Yeah, I think so. Somebody asked me that the other day. I was hashing out a plot line with a friend of mine, who I call a friend, but I have absolutely, I've never met them before. They're just all these new writer friends that I have. Yeah. But we were hashing out a plot line and he said, well, what is it that makes it Kathryn-esque? And I said, right. I don't really know yet. I'm only on book 1. I don't know what makes Kathryn-esque yet. So I'll find my voice as we go. And I'm dabbling in all kinds of things right now, just trying to learn how to write good as fast as I can, because it's a super fast-paced market and you have to be able to be fast with everything you do. So, I'm doing little small anthologies with a group of other writers and things like that. And this year I'm going to be doing some co-writing with some other writers who are at my level and a little more experienced. So that's going to be pretty interesting. And, just I'm just going to keep dabbling and trying to get better. I don't know if that dabbling is the right word, but I'm going to keep trying to, get better at the craft of writing, because ultimately this will be my forever business, hopefully, in the end. So,
And I know I keep drawing the parallels, but I keep seeing them. Piecing quilts is like that too. Your first one is never going to be as good. When you do your fifth one, you're going to look back and say, oh my word, looking at your first one. And that keeps happening throughout the years and throughout the quilts. And I'm sure that will happen with your books too. But good for you for just starting and for knowing that it's a skill that can be learned, right? It's not like magic writing a book. It's a skill and you're learning it.
Yes, it's definitely a skill and a multifaceted skill. I draw parallels to the quilting world all the time, and I don't know if that's
good.
Just
it's
because...
not just me.
No, not at all, not at all. And I don't know if I sometimes think it's just me. I don't know, but I think it's very, very much the same from start to whatever the finish is going to be. But I draw those parallels all the time. Like, this is just like quilting. I got to learn how to do these things. I got to learn the do's and the don'ts. And I got the book police. And, they even use, I say the writers and the authors and the readers, they even use some of the similar acronyms. They use to be finished, which is something that we use, and work in progresses and UFOs. And so like they even use those with their books. And so as I get deeper and deeper into this new community, I learn it's so similar to the quilters. It's uncanny.
That's funny. Well, we look forward to the journey. It'll just get better and better, won't it?
Yeah.
And good for you for just enjoying that journey. Well, before we go, I wonder if you have a little nugget that you would like to share with our listeners. It can be to do with writing or quilting or life in general, just a little nugget of wisdom that you've learned.
I have like 1.5 nuggets, I think, here.
Oh, perfect.
So in quilting, I would say your quarter-inch. I always tell people, the most important thing is to learn your quarter-inch seam. I have plenty of stories about where my quarter-inch seam wasn't up to snuff, and you know how quilts go when that happens. But I would say for quilters that your number one thing to strive for is learning that quarter-inch seam, because everything you do thereafter is going to be so much better for
it's foundational, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think my second little nugget would be pressing matters, which is most likely going to be the title of book 3.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
She's on the cover holding an iron. So there'll probably be some nuggets about how pressing matters in that book. But, next to learning that quarter-inch seam, learning how to press your seams, I would say is probably, those two things go hand in hand and are probably the most important things that I would focus on in my quilting journey.
Well, thanks for that. And I'll just add, you've given very practical bits of wisdom, but kind of a thread that's been running through our conversation this morning that I've learned from you is that just to step into something and start when you have an idea, when you have a dream, whether it's your brick and mortar shop, whether it's writing patterns, whether it's writing books, just do it.
Very good. I like that. That's great.
So see, I've learned something.
That's very exciting. Yeah, I've never been one to shy away from anything that I wanted to do. I generally, when I set my mind to do something, or when I decide I want to do something or say I'm going to do it, I generally just go right ahead and do it. Most people, they either got to jump on board and come along or get left behind, unfortunately. Life is too short. You have to do what makes you happy, and do things and try things, try new things. I love to try new things. It's one of my favorite things.
Never lose that enthusiasm.
Yeah.
That's what makes us creators.
Yep.
Well, thanks a bunch for joining me in the studio. This has just been a treat to hear about your journey and the corners that you're turning. So I'm going to be rushing out tonight to find the book and get into it. And I forgot to ask you, is that available in digital format?
Yes, it's available online on Amazon. You can search Sewing Suspicion, A Quilting Cozy Mystery, and you'll also find the pre-sale for book 2 there. It's also available in paperback as well.
Okay. And what are the best places for people to find you, like on social media? Where should they look for you and your books and your patterns?
So they can find the patterns at dragonfliesquiltshop.com, and I'm sure you'll put the links in for that. But also find us on Facebook. We have a Books for Quilters group, and so if you just type in Books for Quilters, you should find us there. And then there's also an author, Kathryn Michael page. So I go by Kathryn Michael, Mykel. That's my pen name. And you can also find me on Patreon. It's a really fun place. If you've not experienced Patreon before, there's a lot of really great quilters there as well. So as well as writers. So there's a lot of fun to be had. So search around on patreon.com and, find some groups to plug into there as well.
All right. Well, we will be sure to put all those links into the show notes. So if you haven't been able to keep up with the speed of them, we'll have those links ready for you in the notes. So thanks again for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcast or the podcast app of your choice. It really helps other listeners to find the show so that they can enjoy these stories too. Plus, I would love to hear from listeners who'd like to nominate a crafter with a story to tell. If you know such a person, email me at info@stitchedbysusan.com, and don't forget to CC the nominee. So until next time, may your sorrows be patched and your joys be quilted.